You can help me, can't you? I'm cold. The voice was a whisper, thin as tracing paper, but it cut through the late November drizzle like a razor. It was 3:17 a.m. at the side entrance of St. Jude's Children's Hospital. The door was for emergency room overflow and deliveries, mostly ignored after midnight. Security guard Hector Ruiz, a man whose third shift was as gray and worn as his mustache, had just started his rounds. He was expecting silence, maybe a stray raccoon. He got a boy in a wheelchair. The boy couldn't have been older than 10, small and slight, his legs tucked uselessly beneath a worn tartan blanket. The wheelchair wasn't a sleek modern model, it was heavy, industrial, with scratched metal spokes and a thick layer of dried mud on the wheels. He was parked directly against a wall, mostly out of the rain, shielded by the hospital's huge concrete overhang. The stark contrast was immediate, the glowing, sterile promise of the hospital's interior against the boy's dark, sodden innocence. Hector, a man hardened by 2 decades of urban patrol, felt the familiar internal wall of professional detachment crumble. He crouched, his heavy coat rustling, his voice dropping to a low rumble. "Hey there, kiddo. What's your name? Where are your folks?" The boy didn't flinch from the direct light of Hector's flashlight. He just looked up with enormous, tired blue eyes, his face pale and framed by dark, wet hair. "My name is Elias. And they're gone." He gestured vaguely toward the deserted access road with a small, trembling hand. The air tasted of exhaust fumes, stale rain, and the metallic tang of old fear. Hector knew that kind of silence, the one that follows a scream. This wasn't a kid who got lost in a mall. This was a drop-off. A surrender. A betrayal. The kind that punched you in the gut and left you breathing cold dust. "They took me as far as they could," Elias said, his voice flat, devoid of self-pity, which made it all the more heartbreaking. The car stopped. A long time ago. And then, a long way walking. The phrase hung in the air, a long way walking. It was a chilling absurdity coming from a child whose legs were paralyzed. It implied someone else's cruel exertion, a final, grueling march before abandonment. Hector felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. He ran a hand over the rough weave of a cheap nylon backpack resting on the boy's lap. "What's in here, Elias? Your clothes? Something that tells us who to call?" Elias tightened his grip on the bag's strap. "Just the important stuff. Mom said to only bring this." She said. She couldn't fight them anymore. He lifted his chin, eyes locked on Hector's, a flicker of something defiant in their depths. "They wanted the property. Not me." The clarity of his statement was the first true shock. Then, Elias reached for the zipper and slowly pulled out a tattered, waterproof notebook in a thick, sealed envelope labeled in unsteady, block handwriting, "T.O. the doctors." Only. He held the envelope out. "The notebook is my best friend. The letter is for you. Everything is explained." Hector took the envelope and tucked it into his pocket, his mind racing. He signaled for the hospital's overnight physician, Dr. Lena Sharma, a woman notorious for her razor-sharp logic and even sharper temper, to come outside. While waiting, he asked Elias, "Who are they, son?" Elias's lower lip began to tremble, the composure finally fracturing. "The guardians." He spat the word out like a piece of glass. "They're not my guardians. They took everything when my real dad died. They're just waiting for me to stop needing so much." He paused, looking down at his inert legs. "They told people I was a vegetable. That I just cost money." Suddenly, the silence of the pre-dawn hours was ripped apart. 2 blocks away, a pair of headlights, big, halogen bright, belonging to a black, late-model SUV, slowed. It was the wrong kind of car for this hospital entrance. It moved with the predatory crawl of a hunter. Dr. Sharma arrived, her silk scrubs and quick steps betraying a sudden anxiety. "What is it, Hector?" "I have an intubation waiting." Hector grabbed her arm, his eyes never leaving the SUV, which had now parked and killed its lights. "Forget the intubation. This kid is running from something, or someone. His legal guardians are probably coming back for him. They think he's a financial liability and they just dumped him like trash, but now they might be scared the police were called. Two figures emerged from the black SUV, a tall, heavy-set man and a woman in a stiff trench coat. They started walking toward the entrance, their movements too fast, too purposeful. "You have to read this," Hector hissed, pulling the sealed envelope from his pocket and shoving it at Dr. Sharma. "Take the boy inside, now. Back to your desk. Don't answer any questions from these people. Get into safety. I'll buy you 10 seconds. The hospital's mission was to save lives. Tonight, that meant more than just medicine. It meant an immediate, risky choice: defy protocol, shield a child, and face the legal blowback, or hand Elias over to the people who left him to freeze. The choice was never really in doubt. Dr. Sharma didn't hesitate. She grabbed the handles of Elias's wheelchair, her face a mask of cold fury. "We're going in, kid. Hold on." The moment she pivoted the chair toward the automatic doors, the man from the SUV shouted, "HUI. That's our property. That boy belongs to us." Hector blocked the doorway, his body a solid barrier of cheap blue polyester in righteous anger. "This is private property. You need to leave immediately. This is a secure area. We are his legal custodians. You are interfering with the care of a ward of the state." The man, whose name, Hector would later learn, was Vernon, was a slick, brutal-looking estate lawyer, now sweating and disheveled. "He's a patient," Dr. Sharma's voice rang out from the entrance lobby, loud and clear. She had parked Elias next to the triage counter. She ripped open the envelope Hector had given her, the paper crackling in the sudden silence. As she unfolded the contents, her eyes, usually hard and clinical, widened. She wasn't looking at a ransom note or a plea for help. Elias, seeing the shock on her face, spoke up, his small voice echoing across the silent room. "Tell them, doctor. Tell them what my mama knew." Dr. Sharma read the final line of the letter, her voice thick with emotion. "The truth is in the bag. He is not a burden, he is my son. And he holds the only proof that my husband's will, naming Elias as the sole heir to the entire Windfall Tech Trust, was forged by these people to sideline a defective child. They don't want him well, they want him silenced." She lifted her tear-streaked eyes to Vernon. "The backpack, Mr. Vernon. That's not a collection of old toys. It's a flash drive. And it just became evidence." The air went dead still. Vernon's face went from indignant aggression to a pale mask of terror. The woman with him let out a small, strangled gasp. There was no need for a physical fight. The threat had been neutralized by the devastating, quiet power of the truth. Vernon and his accomplice turned and bolted back to the SUV, peeling out of the lot in a shower of gravel and screeching tires, a pathetic, immediate surrender to a crime revealed. Hector called his supervisor and the city police chief, not for a missing child report, but for a full-scale fraud and endangerment investigation. The boy was safe, the immediate danger gone. But as the adrenaline faded, a new, cold reality set in. Elias was now a ward of the state, his future tied up in a complicated legal mess of a multi-million-dollar trust fund. Dr. Sharma held the precious flash drive. Elias held a battered, well-loved copy of the Chronicles of Narnia in his small notebook. The biggest question of the night remained: Elias was safe, but where on earth would a little boy with special needs, no family, and a mountain of legal trouble ever find a true home? The case of Elias, the wheelchair heir, exploded across the local news. The initial investigation froze the enormous trust fund and placed Elias in a temporary ward at St. Jude's, the safest, most inappropriate home possible for a child. It was Dr. Sharma who took the first step outside her professional lane. She started spending her mandatory 15-minute breaks talking to Elias, not about his health, but about his notebook. He used it to write and illustrate stories, dark, complex tales of heroes who could only see the truth in the shadows. He had a brilliant, restless mind, hungry for challenge. Soon, the ad hoc Elias Brigade formed. Hector, the security guard, began bringing him mystery novels and visiting on his off days, teaching the boy how to play chess on a travel board. Nurse Gina Flores, a no-nonsense single mother, started wheeling Elias down to the hospital's small, forgotten garden, decorating his chair with stickers and racing him down the long, empty corridors after hours, eliciting the first genuine, unrestrained laugh anyone had ever heard from him. They learned to adapt. Elias's medical needs, which Vernon had painted as insurmountable, were manageable. They just needed coordinated care, not institutional warehousing. They taught themselves to be a family, an unconventional, sleep-deprived, cross-departmental family. They didn't replace his mother, they built a powerful, protective ring around the brilliant, lonely heart of a boy they had saved. They realized they weren't just taking care of him, he was taking care of them, reminding a cynical security guard and a burnt-out physician what it felt like to fight for something purely good. 8 months later, the trust fund case was nearing its conclusion, the evidence from the flash drive irrefutable. But the final hurdle was the hardest, the custody hearing. The Family Services Department, a bureaucracy obsessed with checklists and perceived stability, recommended a state-run long-term facility in another county, citing the unsuitability of his current caretakers. Their lawyer painted a grim, damning picture. Dr. Sharma worked 80 hours a week. Hector Ruiz was an armed security guard with a volatile schedule. Nurse Flores lived in a 2-bedroom apartment. They were a random, high-risk assembly of individuals, not a traditional family unit. The judge, a weary, by-the-book man named Judge Thompson, looked at the file, then at the assembled group, the impeccable doctor, the uniformed guard, the nurse in her bright pink scrubs, all seated tightly around Elias's wheelchair. The Guardian's new legal team argued passionately that the boys' trust fund demanded professional stewardship, not the unpredictable affections of strangers. They spoke of the boy's severe physical limitations, twisting his need for care into a crippling burden. Then, Judge Thompson turned to Elias. "Elias, my boy. You've been through a terrible ordeal. Where do you want to live?" Elias pushed his wheelchair slightly forward. He gripped his armrests, looked past the lawyers, past the judge, to the gallery where his 3 protectors sat. "Your Honor," he said, his voice quiet but steady, "I'm always going to need help to move. The Guardians wanted me to be a statue that cost money. Dr. Sharma teaches me how to make sure the money helps other kids. Nurse Gina taught me how to do a wheelie." A small smile touched his lips. "And Hector taught me how to look at the shadows and not be afraid of them. My legs don't work, but they see me. They see my mind. I am not a risk to them. They are my safe haven. The system is supposed to help, but they just want me to be a number. These 3, they made me a person again. And you can't put a person in a filing cabinet." Judge Thompson closed the legal file. He cleared his throat, his gaze heavy, and then he looked directly at the Family Services lawyer. "This court will not separate a child from the people who love and actively protect him. And I will not sentence a brilliant boy to a life of convenient obscurity." His gavel slammed down with finality. "Custody is hereby granted, jointly and severally, to Dr. Lena Sharma, Mr. Hector Ruiz, and Ms. Gina Flores. You have 90 days to establish a permanent, wheelchair-accessible residence, and this court will follow your progress closely." Case closed. The courtroom erupted in a wave of sound, the quiet tears of the 3 adults, the sudden, brilliant smile on Elias's face. The impossible had happened. The unlikely trio, bound by a late-night abandonment and a child's raw courage, were now a family, a mosaic of late shifts, hospital leftovers, and fiercely protected weekends. It wasn't conventional, it was simply real. 5 years later, the house was a controlled chaos of warmth and life. It was a spacious, adapted ranch house, purchased with the trust fund money that was now responsibly managed by a special court. Elias, now a confident 15-year-old, still used his wheelchair, but he also used a power-assisted bike and played adaptive sports. He had a full-ride scholarship waiting for him at a major university. His stories, once confined to a notebook, were now being published online and winning awards. His biggest advocate wasn't a doctor or a lawyer, it was Hector Ruiz, now retired from security, who drove Elias to his mentorship sessions and proudly manned a table at local book fairs. Dr. Sharma, seeing the immense complexity of Elias's legal fight, started a small, non-profit legal clinic called the Safe Haven Foundation, dedicated to helping families navigate the system to care for children with complex needs, using Elias's case as their blueprint. Nurse Flores, now the foundation's full-time outreach coordinator, used her street smarts to cut through the institutional red tape. The final image, captured in a local magazine profile, was of Elias, grinning, holding up a framed photo of his small, original team, the doctor, the nurse, and the security guard. He'd signed the photo with a single, powerful line from his latest story, a phrase that encapsulated his entire journey from the cold concrete to the warm glow of home. Hope is not a thing that is given to you. It's a thing you fight for, even when you cannot stand.